Hi to all of my fans at Stand With Us. I want to say thank you for the support on the road of the winning the European Championship title. I hope to make you feel proud over and over again. See you guys. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's event. Please take your seats. We will begin in just a few minutes.
Hi to all of my fans at Stand With Us. I want to say thank you for the support on the road of the winning the European Championship title. I hope to make you feel proud over and over again. See you guys. Thank you. Hi to all of my fans at Stand With Us. I want to say thank you for the support on the road of the winning the European Championship title. I hope to make you feel proud over and over again. See you guys. Thank you. Hi to all of my fans at Stand With Us. I want to say thank you for the support on the road of the winning the European Championship title. I hope to make you feel proud over and over again. See you guys. Thank you. Hi to all of my fans at Stand With Us. I want to say thank you for the support on the road of the winning the European Championship title. I hope to make you feel proud over and over again. See you guys. Thank you. Hi to all of my fans at Stand With Us. I want to say thank you for the support on the road of
Ladies
the
and
winning.
gentlemen, boys and girls, men and women of all ages, please take your seats. As the late, great Dave Zinkoff used to say at 76ers games, immediately. Please have a seat. I need your undivided attention because, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to ask you right here, right now, to pay attention to the screen for a short video.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Over speaking. We'll be cruising at 36,000 feet this evening. Our arrival time in Chicago will be 10:45 p.m. Central Time. The temperature there is currently 62 degrees with a 20% chance of precipitation. Meanwhile, relax and enjoy your flight.
Would you like something to read?
Do you have anything light?
Oh. How about this leaflet, Famous Jewish Sports Legends?
Yes, thank you.
It's funny, right? What's the movie, by the way? Airplane. Surely you can't be serious. But you already know the next line, right? Yes, I'm serious. Don't call me Shirley. Who said that? Leslie Nielsen, thank you. Seriously, you could call me Mark Zumoff, the erstwhile TV voice of the Philadelphia 76ers. Of course, we laugh at lines like pamphlet on Jewish sports legends because it's a stereotype. And stereotypes can be funny. But then there's all Jews are rich, or Israel is an apartheid state, or the Jews control the media and the banks. These are stereotypes too. Much different than talking about a pamphlet of Jewish sports legends. Now, I will say that, ironically, tonight, the theme revolves around sports, specifically athletes, Jewish athletes, who have had to fight against anti-Semitism. Wait until you hear from a student leader and her battle against anti-Semitism on college campuses. We will have stimulating conversations with 3 young people who are also fighting anti-Semitism, and you will want to get into the game when you hear one of the greatest coaches in college basketball today, Bruce Pearl, and he supports Israel. Yes, please. Supporting Israel the best way he knows how. But first, I have some acknowledgments. I am here tonight because I could not say no to Seth Friedman. Yes. Seth and his co-chair, Dave Edmond, both here with their much, much better halves. Seth and Allie Friedman, David and Eileen Edmond, please stand with us and hear the appreciation. Now please stand with us and join in as Drew Korn performs the Star-Spangled Banner, followed by Hatikva. Lyrics and transliteration, by the way, can be found in your program in the bag that you got tonight. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Drew Korn.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets
You feel the connection deeply. The pride and the people inspire you. You yearn for peace and hope that your children and your grandchildren will love and support Israel. You want to inspire them to care as you do, to protect Israel and the Jewish people's future. Do you take for granted that they will know what you know and feel what you feel? Do they know how far we have come, where we've been, where we are going? Will they be inspired and rise to the task? Will they stand tall for Israel? With the rise in anti-Semitism, will they understand never again? Our students in high schools and college campuses are being bullied for their support for Israel.
We support the Antifa! We support the Antifa! Israel is a terrorist state!
And often singled out for being Jewish. They attack our children and our community. Your children, your community. With anti-Semitism on the rise, every day requires courage and strength.
You have blood on your hands! Not welcome on our campus!
They are told that they don't belong.
Get off my campus now! I've been in this campus for 10 years! Get the f off our campus now!
That their voices don't matter. That our history, our nation, our people don't matter.
Zionism must be destroyed. It must be gotten rid of. Every aspect of it.
You want to stand tall, to make a difference, to fight back against this hate, to show our collective pride to the world, and ensure that our children and our neighbors will know how to stand strong, and show a legacy of pride, strength, and peoplehood. That is what Stand With Us does. That is who Stand With Us is. We represent you when you can't be there, with offices and programs on 5 continents. We represent you in high schools, where we reach over 100,000 students each year with the beauty of Israel and foster the next generation of Zionist leaders. We are your voice on campus, training students how to lead and reach over 150,000 of their peers each year in the face of intolerance and bigotry. We represent you when we reach 100 million people on Facebook during peak weeks. We educate for the future by sponsoring speaker tours and holding conferences around the world, training leaders and lifting communities. We are your hotline when anti-Semitism rises and civil rights are trampled on, with over 250 attorneys standing by for students, faculty, and community members. We represent your legacy when we partner with over 700 different organizations around the world and share our precious resources with groups who care as you do about Israel. We are working in your name when we use innovative teaching methods to inspire middle schoolers with the wonder of Israel. We represent you when it's time to push back against anti-Semitism, when it is time to stand up for Israel, when it is time to teach, to inspire, to show our collective pride for Israel. And we have only just begun. Help us reach more of the world. Help us empower more of our children, your children, to be courageous, to be confident, to fight smart, to win, and to always, always stand tall. Am Yisrael Chai.
The fight against anti-Semitism is waged on many fronts. Stand With Us has been fighting that fight for more than a generation. We'll give you the chance to show your support for Stand With Us a bit later on. But first, more from a man who supports the organization's efforts on the international front. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Gary Ratner.
Hello, Philadelphia. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight to this wonderful event. It's great to be back here, and it's great to be back in person. And I bring you greetings from our home office in Los Angeles and our director, Roz Rothstein, our CEO and co-founder, and our international board of directors. Today, Stand With Us is one of the leading organizations supporting Israel creating the next generation of Zionist leaders, and with cutting-edge programs and initiatives, proactively fighting anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in your community and around the world. I have been with the organization in one capacity or another for many years, and since its inception, have witnessed its exponential growth from one small office in Los Angeles to a global force with offices on 6 continents, all within only 21 years. The only continent we're not on is Antarctica, and I guess the Students for Justice in Palestine haven't been able to organize the penguins yet, but if they do, I can guarantee you we'll be there to confront them. So we have offices throughout the United States, in the UK, Canada, the Netherlands. We actually have 3 offices in Brazil, and our newly opened, expanded education center in Jerusalem, right across the street from the King David Hotel. Next year, we will be opening offices in South Africa, Australia, and Argentina, where we have been doing programs for many years. After years of strategic planning, we have 13 vibrant departments. These departments stand alone, but also support one another. For example, our legal center, our Center for Combating Antisemitism, our Holocaust Education Center, all support our high school and campus departments, while our research and strategy departments support all of them. And our social media and digital departments provide original content and news for students and community members to pass on worldwide in multiple languages and on multiple social media platforms. During COVID, we quickly pivoted to online education, and we actually were able to grow our reach. We even created a new platform, StandWithUs TV, which hosts original programming and a library of educational videos. During the Hamas terror campaign in May of last year, our digital department reached over 105 million people in only 8 days on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, working around the clock in our Situation Room in Jerusalem. The fact is, people around the world trust and rely on our educational posts to get accurate news and refute the misinformation so prevalent on social media. One of our most prestigious programs are our fellowships and internships for college students, high school students, and Israeli university students, all of which are creating the next generation of Zionist leaders. This year, we have 175 Emerson Fellows on campuses across North America, in the UK, Brazil, and for the first time, we have 5 just recently at our UK office from the Netherlands. We also have a Hispanic Christian Fellowship whose fellows bring programs to their churches. This year, all of our fellows engaged over 120,000 students with StandWithUs educational programs. And our Israeli Fellowship, with 105 fellows, is the premier public diplomacy program in Israel, and now with over 2,000 alumni working in prominent positions in government, business, academia, and medicine. In high school this year, we have 2 leadership internship programs with over 300 students who have reached over 150,000 of their peers with our educational programs. However, despite all the wonderful programs that we are doing, and I don't have time to mention the rest of them, we have huge challenges. The very thing we are confronting at StandWithUs is the battle for hearts and minds about Israel, especially among the generation, which all polls show are less committed and have a less favorable view of Israel. It is a huge task. It is global. Groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace, the Muslim Student Association, and the various myriad BDS groups literally are working overtime to taint Israel's image, to make people believe Israel is the root cause of all oppression in the world, or the phenomenon we call intersectionality, all with the goal of undermining support for Israel through anti-Semitic boycotts. They all have the same message, and they all have the same false pretense that they are fighting for social justice. Despite this effort to destroy Israel, the BDS movement is failing. So now they mix anti-Zionism with their anti-Jewish bigotry, and it is severe, and it leads to violence that we have seen play out all across the United States and around the world. It is the same face of anti-Semitism we have seen throughout the ages. And now, in addition to going after the Jew, they are going after the Jew among nations, Israel. At Stand With Us, we understand these issues and are working diligently around the clock with our dedicated staff to expose and counter it. We fight back smartly and innovatively, such as using legal means or passing anti-BDS laws, and we never back down from the most complex problems. That is what we did when Ben & Jerry's tried to boycott Israel. Using all the means at our disposal, we helped defeat that boycott. As Avi Zinger, the CEO of Ben & Jerry's Israel, said, and I quote, "Stand With Us was the key organization that helped the most with the full variety of work and constant support and pressure we placed on their parent company, Unilever, which resulted in them changing their minds about the boycott." Thank you. It was a lot of work, let me tell you, but we were very successful. Finally, let me assure you, as a partner and an investor in Stand With Us, that your donations are used in the most efficient manner and transparent manner possible. The two major rating agencies for all nonprofits, Charity Navigator and GuideStar, have given Stand With Us the highest rating for the last 11 consecutive years, putting us in the top 7% of the millions of nonprofits in the United States. And you should also be impressed that we spend 89% of all of our donations on programming. So be proud to Stand With Us and the real impact we are making on the most crucial issues facing Israel and the Jewish people. This is the challenge of our time. This is the fight for the hearts and minds. Join us. If you have a foundation or a donor advised fund, please consider including us in your major philanthropic giving. If you have friends or colleagues that care about Israel, connect us with them. Help us grow so we can continue to meet the challenges ahead and stay strong. And I say, never again will we allow what happened before to happen again. So I thank you very much. It is now my great pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of the Stand With Us Mid-Atlantic region and the person most responsible for this wonderful event tonight to give you a briefing on the happenings in the Mid-Atlantic region. Please welcome my esteemed colleague, Paula Jaffe.
So Gary, thank you for that. You know, I hear these numbers frequently, but every time I do, I am never fail to be impressed with them. They really make me proud. So it's just wonderful to see all of you here tonight for the first time being together since COVID. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out and joining us. So here we are. We're just a few miles from we're down the road. Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson were among the founding fathers who crafted the new experiment that was to become the United States. So during those debates and discussions about the form that our republic would take, it was Jewish scripture that was often cited and would become part of the guiding principles of our Constitution, which includes the freedom to worship. But now, 246 years later, 74 years after the founding of the State of Israel in the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, we find ourselves still battling anti-Semitism and anti-Israel activity. The Mid-Atlantic region has not escaped these assaults. But together with you as our partners, and with the incredible staff and our brave Emerson Fellows and Leventhal interns, some of whom are here with us tonight, we've been able to push back. Let me give you a few examples of the challenges that we face locally. At Johns Hopkins University, a chemistry TA tweeted, and I quote, "Ethical dilemma. If you have to grade a Zionist student's exam, do you give them all the points even though they support your ethnic cleansing, like IDK, like I don't know?" Many of the responses to that post supported her failing her students. An example, fail them, free Palestine. That was just one of the anti-Semitic tweets that she posted. The Stand With Us Side Off legal team sent letters to and worked with the Johns Hopkins administration to protect the Jewish students on campus who were feeling increasingly threatened. The university cited privacy laws for saying that there was little that they could do. Our CEO, Roz Rothstein, suggested that the school adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, known as IHRA, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, a gesture that would help give the students some sense of comfort. And we're looking forward to that happening soon. We hope that it will happen soon. Near here, at Westchester University, an individual walked on campus with a sign that said, "Jews caused 9/11 by provoking 9/11. This sign was seen by hundreds of students on their way to class. And to make matters worse, that week, journalist Muhammad al-Kurd was invited to speak on campus. He is an anti-Semite, and he has written in one of his most recent books that Israelis eat the organs of Palestinians and have a particular lust for Palestinian blood. He has compared Israelis to Nazis and denies the historic connection of Jews to the land of Israel. When we learned about this, our campus manager immediately contacted the Jewish Life leadership on campus, collaborating with them, giving them information about al-Kurd, and we crafted talking points on how to handle the signage incident. Due to his efforts, he was able to identify a student leader who will be our Emerson on campus this year. He will be creating a space for Israel education to flourish on campus, as well as supporting his fears in fighting the dangerous and blatant anti-Semitism. And you'll hear later during our panel discussion about what happened right here in Philly at Temple University. Even though the school year has just begun, some of our Leventhal High School interns are already planning an anti-graffiti, pro-Israel educational mural, and another group is working on a school-wide assembly to educate their peers about the Boycott, Divest, and Sanction campaign, BDS campaign against Israel. In the broader community, we're serving as a hands-on resource for a new group in Richmond, Virginia, that is very concerned about the anti-Semitic activity happening on several of the college campuses in the region. We're working with parents in Northern Virginia who are dealing with an increasingly difficult school board that is seeking to include the anti-Semitic ethnic studies curricula for their students. In Maryland, we have partnered with the Baltimore Zionist District to present panels of timely and relevant discussions, as well as provide educational support for their regional summer-long teen trip to Israel. Along with our side-off legal department, we have counseled and advise members of our community on how best to structure wills and bequests that they are about to give to universities to ensure that those monies will never support anti-Semitic and anti-Israel campus activity. We've introduced our new Holocaust Education Center to local leaders, both at the university level and public and private schools. We continue to bring our excellent middle school curriculum, Israel Link, to regional synagogues and day schools, and will now begin to expand that reach into secular private schools. And this December in New Jersey, we will partner with the Mid-Atlantic region of Hadassah to present a half-day seminar for high school students and their parents titled Being Jewish on Campus, Empowering Teens and Parents for Today's Challenges. This work done on campus and in high school in the Mid-Atlantic is led by an incredible team. I can't do this alone. My sincere thanks and extreme gratitude go out to our high school managers, Jolie Davies and Ari Chesterman, and to our campus managers, and to our campus managers, Amit Ankawa and Dimas Guaico. And this all happens because of you, our supporters. We are so grateful for your partnership in helping move this important mission forward. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please welcome Dimas Guaico to the stage for a quick campus facts and figures update.
Salam,
Thank you, Paula. This year on 15 campuses in the region, we've connected with over 4,000 students through 60 programs. This is remarkable because even though campus life is still impacted by the COVID pandemic, we've been able to carry on this work because of incredible student leaders like this.
I'm Paige Weisberg. I go to Muhlenberg College. I'm going to be a senior. I'm a political science major and a women and gender studies minor. At Muhlenberg, we call our little space the Muhlen bubble, and nobody really leaves. Everything is very insular. It's a campus of people that are very much connected in all ways, and that's not how the real world works. And in the real world, there are problems that exist within understanding Israel and anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. The students on my campus are not really aware of how, Israel as a state operates. Being able to advocate for not just people on my campus, but for connections that have been made across all walks of life for every student that I interact with is really important, because you don't know where you're going to end up and you don't know what is going to be a problem wherever you do end up. I had a very different perspective on Israel programming when I was in high school. I was not as confident in my ability to run them. My regional manager and I would sit on our one-on-ones, and he would help me shape the random ideas into programming. Watching those programs and those random ideas actually become something on my campus was really amazing. And being able to advocate for Israel if you need to is really important. Deciphering news is really important. And that's something that I have made a really big priority in my Israel programming on my campus. I am planning on going to law school when I graduate, and I got the opportunity to work with StandWithUs' legal team last summer, and it was incredible. Yael and Jonathan are major inspirations to me, and as soon as I saw them, my first Emerson conference on Zoom, I was like, this is something that I can totally do with the rest of my life. It's really impactful when you have people that really care having those conversations, and that was something that I learned while working with StandWithUs. And I'm thankful that I managed to be able to do this, because I don't really know where I would be if I didn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Paige Weisberg, our 2022 campus champion.
You mentioned doing these international trips once.
Paige Weisberg, she rocks, doesn't she? I mean, seriously, right? Our next guest also rocks, a nationally known sports figure who is not afraid to put it out there.
You mentioned doing these international trips once every 4 years. Why was it important for you to make the trip to Israel specifically?
Because they love their basketball. I mean, listen to those kids, and they're good, and it's just not happened before. But I think with ESPN as a partner, we blaze a trail now. I think there's going to be other college teams that's going to want to come over and have this competition and have this kind of historic, educational, religious, spiritual experience. It was nothing short of amazing.
מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ. אמן.
Those are my people! I'm gonna go talk to the jungle here in Tel Aviv, because I brought the Auburn jungle with me to Tel Aviv. Hey, listen up, guys. We love you too. All right, listen up, guys. I can't tell you, I just can't tell you how much it means to me. And I can't tell you how proud we are of you. I'm Chayil Yisrael! But just like I tell my players, we have a responsibility. God has blessed us. He's chosen us. And with that's a responsibility. Just like I tell my players, you got to represent the name on the front of your jersey. That's Auburn. You got to represent the name on the back of your jersey. That's your family name. But you also got to represent God's children, the Jewish people. You got it with how you act, with how you study, with how you love each other, what kind of neighbor you're going to be. Let the light continue to shine upon you and shine upon all of our people.
I was in Israel this past summer for the 21st Maccabiah, and my only regret is that I left right before this man arrived in the Holy Land with his team. Ladies and gentlemen, the recipient of tonight's Guardian of Israel Award, Auburn men's basketball coach Bruce Pearl. Coach, come on up.
I'm Yisrael Chai. I don't have any notes. I'm going to open up my heart and hopefully use my head a little bit, and we're gonna kibitz for a little while, okay? You all know me as Coach Bruce Pearl. Some of you may know me as Mordechai Shmuel ben Moshe Ber. That's my Hebrew name, and I go by both, and I'm very, very proud of both. You know, they say, don't talk about religion and don't talk about politics. And so all I'm going to do tonight is talk about religion and politics, okay? But what I'm going to ask you to do for me, please, is just offer me the grace, because I am going to speak from my heart, and not everything I'm going to say is going to be right or necessarily how everybody is supposed to think or believe. It's just how I believe. It doesn't make it any better than how anybody else believes, but I'm just going to share that a little bit with you. So I get asked this question a lot of times. Where did you fall in love with Israel? How did you get to be, so loud and proud about your Judaism? And I think for all of us, there has to be a starting point. And for some of our kids, they don't really have a starting point because they didn't have a grandfather whose family was lost in the Holocaust like I did. So let me just tell you a real quick story. So I was born in 1960, all right? 15 years after the gates were opened, and I learned that 6 million of my brothers and sisters were murdered because of how they prayed. And they prayed the way I prayed. They prayed the way my papa prayed. And, boy, that was hard to kind of wrap your arms around. But I remember one night when I was 7 years old, it was 1967, and it was the Six-Day War. And my grandfather, who kept kosher, who was an Orthodox Jew, went to synagogue every day, almost every day. I don't know if he went Sundays, but I knew he went Monday through Friday, and he went on Shabbat. And wrapped tefillin, and he was a plumber, though. And so when I was old enough to wrap tefillin and go to shul with him, everybody was dressed like we're dressed tonight with suits and ties, and Papa was dressed in his work clothes. But he was still respected in that community, which always sort of stuck with me. So anyways, Papa went to bed after supper every night, but this one night he was awake. He was watching television. I never even saw him watching TV, and he was crying. My Papa was a tough guy. I never saw him even get emotional. And so I asked him, I said, Papa, what are you crying about? What are you watching on TV that's making you so sad? He put me up on his lap, and he told me about the state of Israel. And he told me what was going on right now. It was a Six-Day War, and he was afraid that if he went to bed, when he woke up in the morning, Israel wouldn't be there anymore. So why did Israel matter so much to Papa? And so he told me, he said, you know I came over here when I was 14 years old, and he came over in 1932. And he brought his younger brothers and sisters with him. A total of 4 children traveled, because the family couldn't afford for the parents to come or anybody else to come. So nobody else in Papa's family came to the United States. And what he said was, if Israel was born then, it might have been a little easier for his family to all be able to get to Israel. That's how important having that safe place was. And so that was it. That was my start. That was my beginning. And so many of us here have a story like that. But one of the great challenges that we're facing right now, and one of the most amazing things about what Stand With Us is doing, is they're working with our children who may not, again, have that story. And so that's why I have it. And so we got to find a way to, obviously, try to be able to give it to our children. So I get the question, why'd you take the team to Israel? What was that all about, right? So in 2009, I went to Israel with the Maccabi team. I coached the national team. It was amazing. I brought some Jewish boys over there. In fact, one of my assistant coaches, Harris Adler's here, and one of the players that played on the team, he went to Bucknell. Brian Cohen is actually here tonight. And my job was to bring some Jewish boys over there and make better Jewish men out of them. Now, I think most coaches would have thought, no, your job is to go over there and win the gold, win a gold medal. And we did. We beat Israel in Israel, which, by the way, is really hard to do. That's really hard. Thank God that's hard. Israel doesn't lose at home very often, right? We're playing Israel in the gold medal game. The referees are pathetic. I'm getting no calls at all. You know what their names were? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I was getting screwed by my own people. But it wasn't just about winning the gold. It was about I felt the responsibility of giving those guys some of the training that my papa gave me. So when they came to Tennessee for training camp, we went to Shabbat. We had former athletes that visited with them and spoke to them about more than just the responsibility of going over there and play basketball. So you saw that our team went this past summer. So my goal was I'm gonna bring my team over one of these days. And it wasn't an easy thing to do, because whether it was safety and security concerns or worried parents or other organizations, either on campus or organizations like CARE, the largest Islamic civil rights organization in America. And as soon as you say civil rights or some social injustice, that strikes a chord with the young people. They called for the Auburn basketball team and its players not to go to the apartheid state of Israel, and reached out to my players on their social media accounts and made a big deal about it. Got to be such a big deal the week before we left that my local press, who's pretty good to me because I'm winning championships, asked me a question about why I was going and who we were going to visit with when we got there, because CARE was calling for us to meet with Palestinians, but not with our Israeli handlers present. And I said to the media, I said, we went to Italy 5 years ago. Not one of you asked why I was going to Italy. Not one of you asked who I was going to talk to, who our players were going to talk to. Why do you get to ask me now? Because it's Israel? Because I'm Jewish? Crickets. I wanted to then continue and ask them, do I have your permission? Is it okay if I live here? Where would you like us to live? Where exactly would you like us to go? I didn't go there. I stayed short. What was my motivation? My motivation is we need allies. We do need allies. Yes, we got a lot of work to do to support our young Jewish people, to help educate them, to help train them. Those that got bar mitzvahs, those that went to Hebrew school, those that have a story, it's a little easier. look, for me growing up, it wasn't easy now. Growing up, I was an athlete. I was the best athlete in town until I was about 15 years old. And I knew what it was like to go into a friend's house and know their parents knew that I was Jewish. Like, why couldn't you bring somebody else home? Why couldn't you have some other friend? Oh, I mean, I felt it was loud and clear. And it was, growing up, I was told that the Jewish people killed their God, killed Jesus. I've had to fight, put my hands up all the time, trying to, sort of defend something that I didn't understand. I just didn't understand it. And it was frustrating. As a coach, my job is to bring people together. That's what I do. We run certain offenses, certain defenses, things like that. But if I were to tell you the one thing that's probably allowed us to have success over the year, it's just trying to get us on the same page and know who the opponent is, how I can bring people together. Growing up in Boston, I saw forced busing in the early 70s. I saw real racial violence. Blacks fighting whites simply because the color of their skin was different, and the things that they were being taught about one another. And obviously, the anti-Semitism was huge. And as a kid, on the playground, I didn't understand that. When you go play basketball and you go to the playground, it's shirts and skins. You don't pick a guy because of what color he is or what temple or church he goes to. Can he guard somebody? Can he make a shot? Can we stay on the floor and win? Our kids could teach us a lot. They could teach us a lot. And that always really frustrated me. I never understood it. And so as I got a little older and I grew in my faith, I learned a little bit more about the God of the Christian community. I learned a little bit more about Jesus. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand. Now, wait a second. Like, Jesus is Jewish, right? Like, he was born Jewish, he lived Jewish, he died Jewish, he celebrated Passover and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Doesn't that kind of make us cousins? We may not be mishpacha, but I mean, we're related somehow. I still believe that, and I really believed that. I'm not making it up. For me, taking my players to Jerusalem, some of them are in Bible study. Some of them go to church on a regular basis. But every single one of them has somebody in their family that reads the Bible or that goes to church. And vicariously, my players went to the Holy Land. Vicariously, those grandparents, those aunties lived through my players and their stories because they walked where Jesus walked. They went to the Garden of Gethsemane where he was betrayed. They went to the Sea of Galilee where he lived for most of his life. And they were impacted by it. And I was able to teach them through the history of Jerusalem and the Bible the connection between the Jewish people and the Christian people. And it was something they just really had never really heard, but they saw with their own eyes. And so people ask me, how are we gonna get this done? How are we gonna do this? That was my secret sauce. That's what we did. My players loved Israel. They saw Jerusalem look just like they thought the Bible was supposed to look, and they saw Tel Aviv and the technology and a beautiful beach city. They saw people of color, all different colors. They saw young men and women that loved their country so much they were willing to serve in the army and die for their country. They saw a patriotism that many of us who are a little bit older have. I'm a Jewish basketball coach in Auburn, Alabama. You don't think I'm grateful? What a great country we live in. I tell my players, look, they killed 6 million of my brothers and sisters. We were in slavery also for years, building Pharaoh's cities. You were in slavery also. I face anti-Semitism. You face racism. You face being racially profiled. There are limits placed on you. I get it. But we elected Barack Obama twice in this country. You can be anything you want to be. I don't want to hear excuses. I know it sounds rough, but you don't think it would be easy for me to be a Jewish basketball coach and put my chai in my shirt? You don't think I don't lose recruits to the realities of there are just some parents that, look, I like this school, you send guys to the NBA, you win championships, but you know what, he's not Jewish. I'm going to send him here. You don't think I got people that at Auburn, God, hey, can you tone the tweeting down just a little bit? Could you stop being so Jewish? We have a choice. Would you give your life for your children? In a second. Would you give your life for your parents? In a second. Would you give your life for a brother or sister? Absolutely. Our brothers and sisters were murdered because they were Jewish. I'm not hiding from it. I'm not. You can have some of this if you want it. Come get it. We're not going anywhere. Like, we've been here from the beginning of time, and we're going to stay here. We're going to stay here. People have got different beliefs about heaven. We study in Torah that, through mitzvah and through good deeds, through reading the Torah, through prayer, for keeping Shabbat, whatever it is, there's a different way. But for the grace of God, at the end of the day, but for the grace of God. Whatever happens, happens. But we're taught how we're supposed to live this life. And so I don't think it hurts us to let the light shine upon us by what we do, by how we treat people, by how we do business, by how generous we are. I'm proud of the Jewish people. We all have our, we all have our deals, right? But I think the good way outweighs the bad. By our hearts, by the way we give, what kind of patriots we are, loving this country. We got a lot to be proud of. There was a time when the United States support of Israel was difficult. The Arab countries were wealthy in oil. Israel couldn't do much for the United States of America. Now, a little different. The state of Israel is the United States' greatest ally. I love the United States of America. I love our country. Israel is my country's greatest ally. They are a battleship in the Middle East, surrounded by some real challenges there. What they're doing in technology and medicine and innovation, we got to stand up, stand with us, and we got to start bragging about the things that we're able to do for the world. We got to identify our enemies. Those that hate us, let them gain. Let them go, okay? Blazing Saddles. We all heard that one too, right? But there are others that haven't made their mind up. For me, I'm a basketball coach in the South. I work in the evangelical community because they love Israel and they stand with Israel. It's right there in the Bible. I'm a basketball coach. I work in the black community. We have got a great deal in common. We've got real history with our black neighbors. We do. It's challenged right now. An organization like Stand With Us is vital to be able to provide the education and the resources for our young people that are out there trying to figure it out. We've got to continue to give them hope. We've got to continue to help them find their own stories. Everybody in here tonight said thank you to me. What are you thanking me for? I'm here tonight to thank you. I came tonight to thank you. You are the leaders in this community. You are the people in every one of your towns that everybody knows that's the Jewish family that does this or does that or supports this or support. I'm here to say thank you. And together we can make a difference.
And now I would like to present three members of a panel who have generously given of their time and their talent to fight against anti-Semitism. She is currently a New England Patriots cheerleader who works professionally with Greater Boston's Jewish Federation as a campus engagement manager. Please welcome Eliza Canner. She was a member of the women's crew team at Temple, only to be forced to leave the team after facing anti-Semitism from a teammate. Please say hello to Sasha Westrick. And finally, a good friend and the first base coach for Team Israel in the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo. Now an assistant baseball coach and recruiting coordinator at the University of Richmond. Please welcome Nate Mulberg. New England Patriots cheerleader Eliza Canner, I will start with you, and I understand that you experienced a couple of incidents of anti-Semitism while you were in college, and that inspired you to do the work that you're doing today on college campuses on behalf of the Jewish Federation of Boston. If you will, please describe those incidents of anti-Semitism.
Yes, well, first I want to thank Paula and the Stand With Us team for inviting me here today. Such a wonderful event. And it's always so wonderful to be back with my Stand With Us family, but my first incident was actually before I was connected to Stand With Us. So my first year at the University of Connecticut, I was on the university dance team, and we got our practice schedule, and one of the practice fell on Yom Kippur. So the other Jewish teammate and I, we emailed the coach thinking it would be no problem if we said that we would be at Hillel for Yom Kippur and at Break the Fast, so we would unfortunately be missing practice that evening. She responded pretty swiftly and said if we were to miss practice, if we sat on a practice that evening, then we wouldn't be able to be on the sidelines and perform at that Saturday's football game. So being a freshman and not having the tools and resources, I said, well, the only option is to go to practice. I could have my dad write like a strongly worded email, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I went to practice and had Break the Fast after practice at a dining hall and told my teammates how unfortunate it was, but I didn't quite know what to do. Then after I went on Birthright, I became the rah rah go Israel girl on campus, and my Israel fellow at the time connected me to Stand With Us. And I went to the training conference and I met with the incredible educators, and I finally felt that the ability to be empowered. And I was taking a modern Middle Eastern studies course my sophomore year, and the professor put a map up on the screen, and it was entitled Modern Middle East. And she was pointing to the countries on the map, and she said, this is Syria, this is Lebanon, this is Jordan, this is Palestine. And in that moment, I know I had two options. I could either stay in my seat and not say a word, or I could stand up and speak up for Israel. And so I raised my hand and I said, Professor, that country that you just pointed to is called Israel, and you're doing an injustice to this entire lecture hall if you call it anything but that. And there was a pause, and the professor looked at me and she said, oh, Eliza, you must be Jewish. That's the only reason you care about Israel. So as you can imagine, it was a very, very difficult semester, but thanks to the resources and the education and the empowerment I had from my campus coordinator and the staff at Stand With Us, I was able to work with the campus administration, and ultimately the professor had to course correct and make a public apology. And that was really the pivotal moment for me, and it was the toughest semester of my collegiate career. However, I was really able to understand that if I wasn't standing up and speaking for Israel, that who would in that moment? And so it led me to my career.
Thank you for sharing that. This past summer, as I mentioned earlier, I was at the 21st Maccabiah in Israel, and many of the soccer matches were played at the Kraft Sports Complex. New England Patriots owner, of course, is Robert Kraft, and that's just one small example of his philanthropy. Tell us, Eliza, if you would, how he talks to his first-year players about anti-Semitism.
Yeah, so many people ask me, how did you become an NFL cheerleader? And I say, I'm not an NFL cheerleader. I'm a Patriots cheerleader. And I wouldn't be doing this sport and having this profession if it weren't for the Kraft family and everything that they do to support the Jewish community, both in Greater Boston, but also internationally, and their undivided support of Israel. And so I was having a meeting. I had just made the team. I was so excited to begin my rookie season, and I was having a meeting with the Together Beat Hate team, and that's a division of the work that they're doing to fight anti-Semitism and different forms of hatred. And so I was having a meeting, and Mr. Robert Kraft decided to join the meeting. So as a rookie, I was like, wow, I get to have a conversation with Mr. Kraft. It was such a beautiful moment to be able to talk about our relationship with the Jewish community and with Israel. And he shared with me that he has a conversation every year with the rookie class, and he asked them, who here knows what anti-Semitism is? In that season, only one player raised their hand. Does anyone know who might have raised their hand last season? No. Mac Jones, last season. So Mac Jones raised his hand, and he shared that he knew what anti-Semitism was. And Mr. Kraft said, no, I want to replicate that, and I want to do that with the cheerleading team. So Mr. Robert Kraft and I got to stand side by side in educating the Patriot cheerleaders about what anti-Semitism is and what they can do to help combat it. And my teammates were asking how they can join the fight against anti-Semitism and what they can do in their respective communities. And that really needs to be a conversation that's had in every single professional team.
Elisa, thank you so much. Sasha Westrick, as we turn to you, we are going to show the audience a photo that you received while you were a member of the crew team at Temple University. What's the story behind the photo, and how did things eventually resolve themselves?
So it was my first year at Temple University on the women's rowing team, and I was placed in our athletic apartments. And my roommate sent a photo while I was in study hall of me with the text, I hate Jews, and sent it to me directly. And I went to my coach, and I went to the athletic therapist we were mandated to see, and I wasn't able to get the help that I felt like I needed. And I was kept in the room with her for the majority of the year.
What did you do to eventually resolve the situation?
It's a pending lawsuit right now, but to me, like what I did for my personal, like to move on for me was, I teach English as a second language, and just to talk about what happened to me, and like to teach other people from other countries about, you know, Israel and what it means to be Jewish. Like, I think when you learn from other people and when they learn from you is when there's more peace in the world, and I think if I can contribute to that, that's the best outcome.
And when you teach people about Judaism and about Israel, is there a specific forum that you use, or do you just happen to do this when you see that the opportunity is right?
I feel like I build off of other people. I mean, after what happened to me was broadcasted on ABC6, I had a lot of messages on Facebook and Instagram telling me that they felt like they were able to speak out about what happened to them because I spoke about what happened to me. So I feel like the more I talk about it and destigmatize it and take the power away from her and give it back to me, I take every opportunity I can to speak about it.
And as you and I spoke before tonight, you're still very much involved with rowing, which is good.
Yes.
What are you doing?
I'm training for the U23 national team and then trying out for the senior national team.
All the best with that. Sasha Westrick, everyone. Coach Nate Molberg, 2 incidents of anti-Semitism that I would like you to talk about.
Sure.
One happened at the Olympic Village when you were there in Tokyo, and the other occurred where you work today at the University of Richmond. Please recount those, and if you could, tell us how things eventually turned out.
Sure. So when I was fortunate enough to go to the Olympics last summer in Tokyo with Team Israel, it was the 49th year anniversary of Munich, the Munich Olympic Games in 1972. So going into it, it was, for me personally, it was, again, the COVID Olympics. You know, I was definitely a lot of emotion. I think our whole team felt that, being able to go to Tokyo. some of you may have watched opening ceremonies. It was actually the first opening ceremonies that there was a special moment of silence played for the Munich 11, which made it even more meaningful being there with the Israeli baseball team. But again, as we learned through the qualifying stages before we got to the Olympics, we always had to kind of be, on just radar that something could potentially happen. We always traveled with security, and we weren't supposed to wear our Israel clothing outside in public. So going into the Olympic Village, we were all kind of well-versed knowing that, something could happen, whether nothing necessarily serious, but, maybe with another delegation or another athlete. So early on at opening ceremonies, actually, one of our players actually tried to trade pins, which is a common practice at the Olympic Games and also the Maccabi Games. You trade pins with other teams, and in a Middle Eastern country, one of our players was talking to an athlete from a Middle Eastern country and asked if he could trade pins, and that individual athlete said sure, to which the delegation head came over and said, "We don't do that." I heard this story, and then kind of again put me kind of on edge a little bit, but thanks to the great experiences I had going to the Maccabi Games growing up, I was well versed in pin trading because I went to the Maccabi Games for 3 years as a kid, and I was obsessed. I mean, my good friend Seth Freeman, who I went to the Maccabi Games with, he knows, like, I was literally obsessed as a 13-year-old trading pins. So when I got to the Olympics, every free moment I had, I was trading pins. So one night, I actually went up to an individual. To be honest, I didn't even know what country the person was from. It was night out, couldn't even see, but I just tried to trade pins with everybody. And he gave me the pin, and we exchanged, and I was looking at this pin. It was an awesome pin. And then he said, "What country are you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from Israel." And he took the pin out of my hand, and he said, I don't trade with you. And he took it right back out of my hand and walked away. That was obviously a very kind of overwhelming experience for me. I didn't really know how to respond. I'd heard about one of our players going through that. When you hear about it, it's one thing, but when you go through it yourself, it's really hard to put into words how that made me feel. And then as far as what happened at the University of Richmond, last year, again, this was about 6 or 7 months after I returned from Tokyo and felt very empowered being a part of the Team Israel Olympic team. There was a swastika drawn on a campus building, to which, of course, there were a lot of fallout from that. There's a very strong Jewish community in Richmond, Virginia. There's a great Jewish federation. There's several synagogues. There's Hillel on campus. And it got to the point where, unfortunately, a lot of the students on campus, they didn't feel safe even going to Shabbat anymore because of this situation. In response to that, our deputy athletic director came to my office and sat down with me and started crying. She is in charge of diversity and equity on campus with the student athletes. She is also a woman of color, so kind of how Coach Pearl talked about, there's some similarities and experiences, and she basically started crying in my office saying she felt so sick to her stomach to think about how there are students on campus that are literally scared to walk around and go to Shabbat because there could be something that could happen to them. So she, again, knowing that I just came back from the Olympics, said, "What can we do?" And so in coordination with the Jewish Federation of Richmond, we basically set up a visit to the Holocaust Museum in Virginia, which is right in Richmond, and we took 3 of our teams there, both lacrosse teams and our baseball team, to basically do a full-day experience there. That was just a tremendous experience because I think for me, again, this whole story impacted me significantly, but just seeing how sports on campus and the coaches who were not necessarily Jewish, with a lot of players who weren't Jewish, were so willing to go to the Holocaust Museum with our team and learn, and just how people were moved from that experience. It was truly overwhelming, and something that we're going to continue as an athletic department moving forward.
So if I may, I'd like to end things on a positive note. And Nate, you actually have a story for us from Germany, of all places. Please explain.
So it was actually almost 3 years to the day. It was September 9th, 2019. We were in the European Championship, which was basically the first step to us getting to the Olympic qualifiers. So Coach Pearl talked about how hard it is as an American team to compete in Israel. You can imagine how hard it is to be an Israeli team playing in Germany against Germany, because that's what we were doing. And when we got there for the European Championship, we won the first 2 games as the big underdogs, like Israel so much often is. And the game versus Germany was very eerie for a lot of reasons. Of course, that's where the Holocaust took place. This was 47 years in 2019 after the Munich 11. Now we're back in Germany where the Holocaust took place. And not only are we playing in Germany, but we're actually playing Germany on their home field. Well, this was a crucial game in getting us to the next stage. We were losing 2-1 the entire game. We come back in the top of the 8th to make it 2-2. It's now the bottom of the 9th, and our pitcher at the time was John DeMarty, who's a player that actually I was fortunate enough to coach at the University of Richmond. We were on the team together with Team Israel. He gave up a pitch that we thought was going to be a walk-off homer to left field to end the game, and it hit off the fence. Literally didn't go over by this much. We then proceeded to win in the top of the 10th. We scored 2 runs, and we won that game 4-2. Just to explain the emotions, and I mean, I'm feeling emotion speaking about it, shaking the Germans' hands after the game with, players who, of course, maybe in some ways could have had ties to the Nazi Party many years ago. So the positive note is that it just was such a beautiful feeling, just overwhelming for all of us, knowing again, years after the Holocaust, we're in Germany playing them in a very peaceful setting, and the Germans were great to us the entire time there, something I'll never forget.
Elisa Kanner, Sasha Westrick, Nate Mulberg, thank you so much. Isn't it great to see 20-somethings, 30-somethings who comport themselves this way and feel the way they do about anti-Semitism in Israel? Please give them a hand one more time. I'd also like to congratulate and thanks to Paige Weisberg and Coach Bruce Pearl. By the way, all of the folks who you've seen tonight are expected to be at the dessert reception, which is back in the dining room where you had dinner. Thank you, everyone, tonight for your generosity and your attendance. I'm Mark Sumoff. Stay with us. Go back, have some dessert, enjoy the schmooze, and have a great night.